welcome to everybody who is here, wherever you're listening, on the Riverside link or live on LinkedIn as well. Let us know if you have any technical difficulties. This will be recorded. Or this is being recorded. We will send you the recording. I'm just going to get that out of the way. This will be recorded. We will send you the recording after the workshop. But today we are going to talk through how to design and optimize an onboarding plan. I have here Shareil Narriman, who is head of customer success at Arrows, previously led onboarding teams, success teams at companies like Booking.com and Sprout Social. So it's built and scaled onboarding teams at those companies, and sort of is bringing all that expertise and knowledge to Arrows, where we build a product for onboarding teams. But of course, Shareil is also working directly with Arrows customers to onboard them. So lots of meta stuff going on from that perspective. I'm Stuart. I lead marketing here at Arrows. You may have seen content that we're putting out on LinkedIn and various places. Our goal really is to sort of help move onboarding as a practice forwards and ultimately help companies make more happy, successful customers. So today we're going to cover a few things. I'll hand this mostly over to Shareil in a second, but we're going to go through how to map and document your onboarding process. This is really the starting point for everything else we're going to talk about, which is building a clear path to success for your customers. So once you've documented the process, how do you make sure that your customers know what is going on and that they're on that path to success with your product? And then finally, and this is the question that we get asked a lot, the thing that we really believe in terms of how we approach onboarding, is how do you report on onboarding, on the performance of onboarding, and most importantly, how do you make sure that you're improving your onboarding process to ultimately help your customers, but also help the business. And then we'll end. We're going to go about 30 minutes, sort of relatively structured, sort of walkthrough on these first three topics, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A. If you have any questions as we're talking, let us know in the chat, and we'll try to cover everything there. And if not, we will get to them in the Q&A at the end. But without further ado, I guess, Shareil, welcome. It feels a little weird. I'm not actually hosting, I guess. But great, Shareil, great to have you here. I know I'm excited. We have a ton of chats internally about all things onboarding. Excited for folks to experience a little bit of that as well. But yeah, maybe a good starting point is just like a really quick background on like how you think about onboarding as a practice, and then we'll dive right into how to map out your own onboarding process.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks everyone for joining and tuning in and caring about onboarding. I like to tell Stuart all the time, I've been doing onboarding for a while now before it was cool. And so it's super nice to see now that other people are also intrigued and interested in it, and that it actually ties to business metrics. And we're seeing the value in terms of both customer retention and actually keeping those customers and growing them, which is ideal, right? But like you mentioned, most of my background is in this world of early life cycle stage management. So from kind of pre-sales to trial to onboarding, and then what I call that adoption phase, which is really the rest of that customer's existence, which is why we also say onboarding doesn't end at Arrows, in the sense that it is a process you should always be thinking about. It's something you should always be optimizing, something you should always be working towards improving. And if you do that, it over time turns it into more of a profit center for your business versus how maybe it's historically been viewed as kind of this reactive operations type of role. So I'm super excited to be here. I'm super excited to share both stuff I've learned in my experience doing this at other companies and now Arrows, but also feel very fortunate because I get to work with so many of our own customers as they work with their customers. So as much as I think I know about onboarding, I'm also learning something every day. And it's super fun to be able to actually share that back and put together these types of workshops and the content we put out, because it's helping not just us, it's helping our customers, it's helping their customers. I think if anyone can build an environment like that or an ecosystem like that, we all win, both as the business provider and as the folks we are serving, and then the folks they're turning around and serving. So really excited about this topic. I think it's an important one, and I'm looking forward to hopefully doing more of these sessions in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a good note, that as we're getting in, the plan is for this to be the first of many of these workshops. So as we're getting into this, if there are things that it's our particular topics that you already called one out, how does onboarding impact conversion rate, which is a great one. We will definitely get into that, the impact of onboarding and improving your process on metrics like conversion rate and ultimately revenue. But if there are specific topics that you would like to see a deeper dive on, and they are, we don't have time to cover them fully today, then we can absolutely do other sessions. So, Shareil, maybe a good place to start. We want to talk about, how do you map your onboarding process? Why is it important from the get-go to have a defined process which you're running
Right.
for onboarding? So maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, generally, right, when you want to build any sort of strategy or program or project, even, you want to write out and document things. And one, for two reasons. One, so that everyone is aware of the process, and in our case, both internally and externally, but especially internally as well. So you want to know where those handoffs are, what's happening, where things are breaking. So generally, you want to document a process. Two is also to know, and kind of ties to onboarding never ending. So you actually know what is and isn't working over time. Because if it's not documented, you're just spinning your wheels trying to guess why customers turn, where they got stuck, where those expectations were maybe misset. So it's really important to both share that and verbalize it internally and externally, but then also give you that framework that you can build on and eventually scale on and so on. And I kind of lie. There's a third thing in there that is jumping ahead a bit, but a lot of people also want to go into this world of one-to-many onboarding and self-serve onboarding and in-app self-guided onboarding, which are all wonderful and strongly encouraged. However, to do those things well, you still need to have a process that you start with, right? And having that process written out, doing this human-led one-to-one onboarding can quickly teach you which parts then you can move into in-app modules and self-guided webinars and that kind of role. So writing it all out, no matter where you do it, in a whiteboard, in a Google Sheet, in an Arrows action plan, just write out every step you can think of and force yourself to take your own bias. The bias comes into play often because we are living in our products daily and we're using them daily. And so what we might think is super straightforward or super intuitive could actually be the part that's blocking customers from moving forward. So forcing yourself to write every step out helps take some of that bias out. Then, so write it all out. That's obviously part of documenting it. Now that you have it all written out and documented, the next step is walking someone else who isn't you through it, again, to force that bias out. And ideally, it's people on your team, but also other folks in your department. So start with your CS counterpart, start with your manager, start with the person who's doing sales and you work with closest, but then also branch out into other people in your departments, especially folks on your design team, especially folks on your engineering team, especially folks on your marketing team, so that they are also aware of that process and what's happening. Because no individual team can do onboarding well. You have to have the buy-in and support both from leadership, but also these other departments, because a big component of onboarding is how it's marketed, is how the product is sold, is how your actual tool itself is designed. And along that way, the third step, what you're trying to do is collect feedback. So you've documented the process, you're now sharing it and verbalizing it. And what you really want to look for is where even internally are people getting stuck or asking you questions? Because if that's happening, for sure, it's going to happen with your customers. So step 3 in that thing is kind of dissecting that whole process and starting to break it out into, and we'll get into this later as well, but do all these steps have to happen right now? Are they critical to actually making progress from point A to point B? Assuming your point A is the customer's been sold, they're closed won now, and they've been told they'll get some sort of onboarding and implementation. And point B should really be, what is that first aha moment or the moment of value realization, all those buzzwords we've heard along the way. But those are real things that have to happen for that customer's expectations who were just set in sales and in marketing to be met. And if you try to, and I think what we do commonly, we've done this ourselves at Eros too, and we'll get into this, but we can often try to jam everything in those initial steps. Like we list all of our features, we list all of the value props that are on the marketing site. We go deep into every single thing that the product can do. And that customer is really just looking for that main moment of value realization. So once you have this process documented, once you start dissecting it, that's a good place to start asking yourself, are all these steps needed? Do they have to happen now? Can they happen in month 2 and month 3? Keeping in mind that onboarding never ends, right? Um, which then stems into this idea of when you have that list of, okay, these are the right steps. These are the right things that have to happen right now. Putting that, and we'll get to this step 2 of the workshop, but putting that into a process that actually scale, that actually is customer facing, that actually is a collaboration space. And then we can get into the topic of, are these tasks really tasks, or are they things like read this help center article or watch this video or set up this setting, all which are valuable. That's not to say none of those steps aren't valuable, and you shouldn't shy away from having 100 steps in your process. You should more be questioning, are these steps being asked of our customers at the right time? And then are we actually giving them an opportunity to go take action on those steps? And that's when you can get into optimizing the process, which we'll talk a little bit later. But to kind of summarize there, make sure you write everything out, and along the way, try to take some of your own bias out in that, put every single step down. As you have that documented, start sharing those steps, both internally with people on your team. Honestly, you can even start testing it with customers. I mean, you're going to optimize this anyway, and you're going to learn quickly where people aren't getting stuck. But now you have it documented, and then really dissect that process. Ask yourself, do I need this now? Are these tasks really tasks? If a customer doesn't do this task, can they still go forward? If the answer is yes, it's probably time to remove that and keep progress moving. But try really hard to get them to that first milestone, because once you do, and that milestone should be guided by them. It should be as simple as, what are your goals? What's the first thing you want to do with our product? And then help them get to that thing. Those should be your first critical steps. Once you have that hook, it is a lot easier to get people back to that second call. It's a lot easier to get them to schedule out further recurring meetings. It's definitely a lot easier to get them to respond to your emails or action plans or asks. But those 3 steps will get you to that point of bringing the process to actual life.
Yeah, maybe that's a good segue into like actually what does a plan look like? Because we have a few questions here that are, somewhat related about sort of the early parts of the journey for a customer.
Mhm.
And I think that's a worthwhile thing to talk about. Is like, when does onboarding begin, or like how do you think about when you introduce onboarding? When do you sort of start putting a plan? When do you loop in your internal team who are going to be working on your onboarding plan? I think that's important to note here too, is that there are 2 sides to this, right? You have things that your internal team or internal teams. You already mentioned
Mhm.
that onboarding is something that isn't, you may well have a team called the onboarding team, but onboarding activities are not, specifically, they're not only done by that one team. It's sort of everybody's
Sure.
responsibility. Everybody has a hand in onboarding customers. So maybe that's a good thing to talk about. And maybe it's worthwhile. Actually, before we get into a plan example, we can talk through sort of more tactically, what are the steps in a plan? Maybe you can sort of talk to that a little bit, like, and using arrows as an example, I think, because Christine has a specific question here, about what's the feedback that you've got from customers about using the plan, because there's hesitation on the sales team to sort of introduce that as another thing that, do customers like it? Do they use it? Do they even open it?
Right. I think that's a great question, Christine. And it's a concern that I see myself often. It's something we have to deal with. And I think part of that is, to take a step up, part of that is we need better internal cross-departmental collaboration for onboarding to work. You need the same thing for sales to work, and the same thing for marketing to work, and the same thing for support to work. All of those people, all those teams, in theory, should be working towards improving that customer experience. Where I have found that hesitation to be alleviated a bit is, at the end of the day, if you have a good onboarding program, good being obviously subjective, but it means customers get through it. they see the value and they can start using the tool or it's implemented or the product or the service you're offering or selling. And in my world, good means can I get you there sooner than later, but get you there in a way where it's still efficient and you're actually using the product to serve your needs. When you can foster an environment that has that type of program and that type of plan, then I have found sales reps love it because it's an asset for them to be able to share with their prospects to close deals. Because now what you're doing is the internally, we know handoffs always break. Like no matter how good your plan is, you're going to have handoffs break internally. People forget to fill out CRM fields. People forget to send an update. People forget to write in their notes. We're all human. That's going to happen. It happens in our world all the time. The goal of a good plan is that customers don't feel those gaps and don't feel those frustrations and don't feel those moments of what the heck am I supposed to do next while Stuart and Shareil figure out this handout internally. So when you have a plan that actually drives customers to their goals and their needs, I have found sales reps enjoy sharing it. Maybe enjoy is the wrong word, but it helps them close deals a little bit faster in that now they can promise and say, this is what's going to happen when I'm done with you. And we are so hands-on, and especially in marketing and sales, we're checking in with people all the time. We are proactively after them. We're trying to get them to respond and trying to get them to follow up and do things. Having that plan in place becomes that asset that you can kind of lead with customers and alleviate some of their fears and anxieties about what's going to happen when I'm done with Christine selling me on the product. I know now, okay, at least it's going to go in with Shareil. He's going to cover ABC. At the end of ABC, this is the goal. This is the dates. Here are the steps we need to take, all those pieces. That is a lot easier said than done, right? Like putting a poor plan in front of someone can cause more confusion and cause more frustration and can cause those sales reps to now be getting a flood of inbound emails asking, what the heck is this plan? What are these steps? I don't know who this person is. So it really goes back again to that working cross-departmentally together and having your sales and success leaders sit at the same table together, conversate, and make sure that what we're trying to accomplish as a customer-facing team is getting these customers from the marketing side to using the product to being convinced that they're going to pay us for this thing. And then now here is how you use it. And this is what the first month looks like. This is what the next month looks like. This is what the following month looks like. So can you guarantee every customer is going to open it? Absolutely not. Now we're getting into psychology and adult learning styles, and everyone learns in a different way, which is also why it's important as you think about a holistic onboarding program to offer things like self-guided resources, in-app modules, one-to-one onboarding, one-to-many onboarding, because humans do learn differently. But if you're giving 100% of your customers an option to be onboarded and meeting them at a place where they can meet their learning styles and all of those pathways still guide and lead you to the same thing. Now, if I'm a sales rep, I would love to have my hands on that plan personally, because I will feel more comfortable saying, okay, I'm done with you after this. Sign the contract. We've paid all this money that I promised you that is going to result in you doing your thing better. Here's what's going to happen next. And then again, where 100% people will get stuck along that way. You will get people fall off. You will get people not opening the plan. You will get people getting stuck on certain phases and tasks. That is why onboarding never ends. That's the opportunity to go back and fix those things, to dissect those things, to maybe learn feedback. Now you can get into the nitty gritty with reports and details, but like if there's a specific sales rep where customers maybe never respond to a plan, is there an opportunity to work there and say, how are you sharing this thing? Are you even sharing it? Are you advertising it? Are you kind of brushing it off? So a big part of it is working together to find out what is a good asset as a sales rep. How does this supplement your process versus feeling like another checkbox you have to do? And then obviously on our side, making sure that the plan does what we're promised. It is getting them from point A to point B. It is delivering the results they expected. And it's making your sales and your marketing teams look good. It is delivering on those expectations they set. It is continuing that journey with you early on.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. There's one thing that I think about a lot when it comes to onboarding and the role of having a plan in onboarding is accountability. And the customer who is paying for but the product isn't just buying it to buy it, right? They're buying it because they want to achieve some outcome, which chances are is going to require that they do some work, that they set some things up, that they do some level of integration. Something is going to have to happen on their side for them to for them to realize that value. And sort of setting that expectation up front that A, there is a plan to get them to the value, but B, that they can correctly allocate time, resource, and invest in ultimately partnering with you to get to
Yeah.
um, that outcome.
Right.
Um,
And one thing I'll add too, it's very important in these plans and any communication, whether it's email plans, arrows, whatever you're sending, to include both the why and the how to do things, right? We need to be reminded why we're doing this. So if you are putting 50 steps in front of me and it's kind of vague and it's unknown and you just set me a random plan and I have no idea why I'm getting this thing, then sure, I will also be stuck and frustrated and probably annoyed with you and your sales rep and that whole team. But if I can understand, oh, if I follow these 20 steps over these next 30 days, what I'm going to get out of it is the goal I set out. I'm going to be able to do onboarding better. I'm going to be able to post my social media posts faster. I'm going to be able to use my booking back end quicker. So reminding people of why they are doing things along with then how to do it is that continuous ingraining of you told me this, here's how you do it. Here's an instant gratification moment and repeat and repeat and repeat. And over time, you'll also learn, and you mentioned this as well, Christine, in the chat of like sales teams wanting to have more control potentially over the process and not having customers completely on their own. That's okay too. There are definitely tasks in that role where you might have to pull out and control manually. I tell my own customers all the time, you should not try to automate and scale every single piece of the process. Like you need some human control in there to see where things are breaking and why they're breaking and so on. Um, so keep that in mind too as you're thinking about influencing sales teams to use this. They also need a why. They also need to understand why they should take another minute to send this plan or create this plan or share this plan or get people to encourage to use it. Their why is hopefully their deals go through and they don't churn early and the plan should be reinforcing all the things they promised them in sales. And then you can take that plan and deliver.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good segue uh, into what the plan might actually look like. And so we're going to walk through this. We mentioned that there's a few meta moments in this, but we're going to walk through the plan that we use at Arrows, or a plan that we use at Arrows to onboard our own customers. So we are going to use Arrows as the tool, but we'll talk through things that are much more broadly applicable to designing onboarding plans in general. So that, whatever you're using for onboarding, would of course love to talk, about some of the specific things, about Arrows, but, for the purposes of this, we're just going to get into the plan design itself. So I'm going to go ahead, and share, what the plan that we use looks like. And we're going to have Shareil sort of talk through, why is all this stuff in here? And what are some of the decisions that were made in coming to this being the plan that we roll out with customers.
Yeah. So what we're looking at here is so this is the Arrows product, but it's a plan template. Um, I've heard this referred to as playbooks and drafts and templates in general, but over time, you'll curate different pathways for potentially different customers based on segment, based on industry, maybe based on spend with your company, based on needs, the type of products they're buying. So we have multiple different plan templates that we use. And the way I think about the plan template is kind of what I was talking about in step one. This is the map out process. Um, I can candidly tell you at Arrows, I've had, I don't know, 10 different versions of this very template you're looking at now, because over time, we have continued to change our product and change our design and change our feature offering. And I've learned which tasks, like I said earlier, weren't really tasks. I was just jamming this plan with features or health center articles or how-to videos. I was showing off some of the capabilities of the plan instead of focusing on what the customer actually needs to do. And so this current template is one we're using for customers who are implementing and configuring their HubSpot accounts with arrows. And so what I had to take a step back from, even for myself, and I worked a lot with our sales team and our marketing team on this, as well as our leadership team, to understand what are those critical moments and our customers, obviously, in that. We've done a ton of customer research and customer calls, and I get to talk to all of our new customers. So I'm learning a lot about what are their goals. And I've boiled this down to 5 or 6 phases, 4 or 5 phases, along with, I don't know, 20 or so tasks. But the point is, what are the things that I need you to do to get started? And it's things like pay your invoice, for example. This is actually one that we go back and forth on. We also have a sales plan that we use in our sales cycle. Sometimes this lands on the sales plan. Sometimes when customers haven't paid their invoice, I'll move this to the very top of their onboarding plan. And I don't shy away from this, and I used to, but I don't shy away from this because at the end of the day, you're paying for a service, and I'm promising you that we're going to deliver on that service once you pay for it. And once you pay it, here's immediately what you can expect next. So it's scheduling your kickoff call. We set up a Slack Connect channel for certain customers. We grant us access to their HubSpot accounts if you're paying for the concierge service. And so it's all those things that I have to do in order to get started. Now, there's also a ton of other settings and updates and things that probably have to happen in this getting started world, but I've removed them because until these 5 things happen, those are a moot point. It doesn't matter what your permission settings are. It doesn't matter what your notification levels are. It doesn't even matter if you're using our advanced reporting, data connections, and all that stuff until you do these initial moments. And what I've also done in past is sometimes I'll just have a single phase with a single task. Like if I have a specific customer who I just can't get to schedule their kickoff call, I will move that up to the very top and make it a singular task in there. And if you open any of these, for
I was going
example,
to switch to what this looks like for a customer.
oh, that's right. We were looking at the
Wait.
edit mode.
Yeah. And then this is a template. So there are some things in here, which, like the customer name would be the name of the customer. But one thing to call out to Shareil's point here, like making sure that the customer knows what is the thing that they need to go and do, is really important, right? So in arrows, that is always the next thing to do is always at the top. But if you open any of these tasks, that's a really bad example. But if we open the schedule your kickoff call one, for example, you can see they have everything they need to go and do that right here. And there's only one thing that they are focused on doing. So I think that to Shareil's point, like if there are things in your process or in your onboarding experience that are dependencies to moving forward, they need to be the things that are included and sort of prioritized to customers over the, all the other things that could be included, that aren't necessarily blocking forward progress.
Yeah. And this is a good, like the schedule of tasks is a good example of how and why, where it should be incorporated. Like the how is pretty straightforward. Use this scheduling page. By now we all are kind of familiar with them. In this case, I have it embedded right into the arrows plan. So it reduces the chance of someone clicking somewhere else or going somewhere else and getting lost. But the why is because we want to confirm your goals. We want to review the process docs you have. We want to cover what's next. And then we want to schedule all those following calls. So even Nader, I don't know if I'm mispronouncing your name, but you had a question in there as well about having a 1-person CS team and a 1-person sales team. And do you really need a handoff? Ultimately, yes, but that handoff can be as simple as this piece of the plan. Like just schedule your call with the next person in line. So even if I don't know who you are, I don't care how big your team is. A customer probably doesn't care how big your team is. I just want to know who's helping me and what's coming up next. And having the ability here to assign this to a person, to add a due date to it, and then comment back and forth if I needed to, helps me at least convey that there is a handoff happening somewhere back there, even if physically I don't have to introduce you or say, this is the next person in line every single time. So sometimes the tasks themselves can take the place of what that handoff would look like. Again, this was my point earlier too. A customer might not even know that a handoff's happening behind the scenes, or that your sales rep is on vacation, or that you two are slacking with each other. They just care what's next, right? And so this can be that placeholder for them to kind of quickly teach them what is up next.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And ideally, your customer doesn't see the handoff, right? There are all sorts of reasons why you might want internal milestones that they may be a handoff between teams, but they may be, well, actually, we have a metric that we want to be able to report on, so we need to measure up to this point and then start measuring the next sort of phase in the life cycle from that point forward. There may be things that are business processes that are blocking a customer from actually getting started on the next phase. For example, maybe you can't have a client upload data until they've signed privacy documentation or security documentation, something like that. Could be a reason to have a handoff, even if it is not between different people on a team,
Right.
different teams.
Exactly. And then if you scroll down a little bit here, Stuart, what we have is kind of the rest of this plan laid out for a generic onboarding in this segment. It's getting started. Then we're going into like the arrows setup of it, then we go into HubSpot setup, and then eventually we get to next steps. And by design, some of this stuff is left kind of ominous in the sense that I'm saying, like, we're going to set up your onboarding reports. We're going to set up your onboarding dashboards. What the beauty of turning this into a customer facing plan is I can take this starting foundation, which I know now over multiple iterations that most customers need most of these steps, if not all of them. But of course, there's going to be unique ones. There's going to be stuff that they might not need to do. There's going to be a bunch of stuff that I have to add on here later. So this, and this was asked somewhere up earlier too, if a customer understands that this plan is where you're going to go to as your source of truth going forward, once I'm done from the sales cycle, now you've set me up to come in here and add individual tasks that are unique to that plan. I can add individual reports. And this is what I do in my actual process, that setting up onboarding reports turns into set up report A, set up report B, set up report C. And then I understand during the discovery calls and during my discovery conversations, both from reading sales notes, but also talking to customers, I'm getting a better sense of which specific reports you're looking to set up, which specific workflows you're looking to set up. And I come in here and customize that for you. So it also acts to me, it saves me time because now I don't have to follow up with an individual email every time I have a call, because I'm having sometimes 4 or 5 calls with customers in the first couple of weeks. And I'm learning a lot. I'm documenting all that, but I keep it in this one place. Of course, I have my own notes. I have recordings. I use Google Docs too, and Google Sheets and HubSpot fields, and it's all over the place. But the customer knows exactly what I'm doing for them when it's happening and what I need from them to make that thing go forward. Which really gives me a chance to send one email to them, one link to them. Every time I go and leave a comment in here or add a task, it triggers some sort of notification to our customers. I can see in the back end when they're viewing the plan, when they're taking action on the plan. That all then syncs to HubSpot. So the bigger holistic advantage of a dynamic plan is that it actually talks to your other systems. And that probably touches on part of your question too, Christine. If it's kind of a standalone, stagnant plan, then yes, it might not be super valuable. But in this case, I know this plan is updating HubSpot as I do things. I know it's informing the sales reps where the customers are in the process. As things get checked off here, that deal moves through pipeline stages inside of HubSpot. There's insight into the process there. And so the plan itself continues to serve as like a communication piece for our whole team. And selfishly, it's nice because now I don't get random Slack messages from people on our sales team saying, where's this customer? Or what happened to this person? And it is all just in HubSpot, or it's all at the plan level. And you can access those things internally as much as a customer can access them. So yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes a little bit of conditioning. Yes, it takes like verbalizing what this thing is and why we're going to work on it together. But once that's there, it has made my life a lot easier. And it's also made it a lot easier to then internally share feedback with where are people getting stuck, and this is part of that optimization that we'll get into next, but where are people getting stuck? Why are they getting stuck? How do I unpack that? Is it a chance for feedback? Is it a chance to improve the product? Is it a chance to improve my own steps and take my bias further out? So there's a lot to learn once you have that starting plan in place.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and a good segue to the sort of reporting and optimization piece, which we'll move quickly here because we want to make sure that we have some time for questions as well. But that's a really good point, that there are sort of 2 levels here, right? There's the individual, I'm working on this plan together with a customer, and I'm going to customize it based on, the things that I know about them. Like a common example for us is, depending on which HubSpot plan you're on, you may not be able to do certain things
Mm.
with arrows that other folks can do. So those tasks will just no longer be relevant for you. But then there's also how do I look at the macro in general? Are we improving the way that we onboard customers? Are there specific places which we should go and spend more time and improve the process, or, discuss how we do those things internally? So Shareil, let's get into, some of, I know you sort of looked through a little bit of this as we've been going, but how do you start to think about that sort of optimization piece, like identifying the places where people are getting stuck, and then, actually sharing that with other folks who need to know, and improving it for customers?
Yeah, I'll re-emphasize this too. Like again, no two customers learn the same way, but over time you'll have enough patterns and enough understanding that you can put a set of commonly taken steps to get someone from point A to point B. Um, where I have seen customers get stuck, both in my own experience, but also in working with all of our customers, is one of three kind of main reasons. When there are too many steps in a single task, this is our bias kicking in. That you'll see over time, and this is part of the beauty of integrating this with HubSpot. We use the pipelines. We can see time spent in each stage, and if customers continuously get stuck on the same task, so let's make up a number, 50% of your customers continue to get stuck on that first task in the arrows template configuration, something is wrong. And it's likely that we have put too many steps in a single task. So you might need to break that out into more steps, and or they aren't actionable steps. We might be saying things like, read this article. Cool. Then what? Do I read this? Do I take action? Is it just read it? Is it FYI? Do I need to read this, then do ABC? So unpacking where customers continuously get stuck is a really good way to either expand your tasks and or ask yourself, like we said earlier, does this really belong here, or should this come later? So unpack those tasks themselves. The next piece is unclear resources. So if you are, and I encourage this, link to help videos, link to knowledge-based articles, link to all sorts of resources that can, but make sure they're actually relevant for the task at hand. So if you're telling me to go set up my user permissions, but you link me to a generic help center landing page with 10 other articles in there, one of them being user settings, the other 9 being random bits of settings or permissions or whatever, that is not a good resource, because you're telling me to do something very specific and now confusing me or putting me into a world where there's an overwhelming amount of resources. So make sure that your help center articles and your videos or wherever you're pointing people align to the thing you're asking them to do, and then have clear instructions as to watch this, then do ABC. And in kind of in sidestepping with that, you want to also make sure that those resources are updated. So this is something I'm working on currently myself. We just launched a brand new UI 2 weeks ago for our product, which means instantly all of my health center articles and screenshots and knowledge-based articles are outdated. So if I'm sending someone to an outdated UI and telling them to do this, and that thing doesn't match the instructions, now again, they're stuck. And at least I want to identify that and know why people are getting stuck. And over time, that's how that plan improves. And then the third piece, and I selfishly think an important one and nice to have data on, is when you have a bad product UI or a bad product design. And we all know our product teams and our design teams can have strong opinions about how great their design is. But if a customer continuously gets stuck on a single task and you have done your due diligence of making sure your resources are clear and your steps and paths are clear, and we're saying, go to your settings and do this in the app, but they just never make progress, or they get stuck, or 10 clicks into a settings page now inside of my app, that's bad design. That's bad product UI. That's an opportunity to sit with your product teams and say, look, I've made my changes. I've changed these tasks. We've tried re-explaining this multiple times. Customers continuously get stuck here. We think it has something to do with the type of product or the design. So having data over time of exactly where people are getting stuck at least gives you a chance to go fix that thing and optimize it. And if you do that over and over and over again, it is inevitable that customers will start to make progress through this plan. They will see the value of the plan you're putting in front of them. Yes, some people will still get stuck. Yes, some people don't learn that way. Yes, some people will just never open the thing. But a majority, we have found at least, do open it, do use it. And I can attest to that in my own world because this current plan Stuart is sharing has worked a lot better than the 9 previous versions of it, where I had unclear steps, I had unclear directions, I was sending people to poor UI and so on. So with time, it does help you move more people through. And as you do that, then you can scale, then you can automate, then you can move this into in-app onboarding and hold strategic webinars like this one and hold workshops that move people through your process because you actually know what those foundational pieces are.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of uh, questions to touch on. So one that I think is interesting, and this is very anecdotal evidence, but we have customers who became customers because they were onboarded using an Arrows plan. Like one
Mhm.
of our other customers sent them an Arrows plan when they were onboarding them, and they enjoyed that experience and became customers of ours. So that these plans do have an impact on the overall experience. And that is not to say that, Arrows is the only way to do this, but having a plan that lays out, becomes an extension of your product, right? Sort
Mhm.
of bridges that gap between the things that a customer is going to go and do in your product entirely by themselves and the things that they're going to work on with you to get to their goals, because not every uh, challenge or not every problem is going to be solved by software. Um, but having that plan in place is sort of help provide guardrails, help provide a clear view of what's next to move forward.
Mhm.
And the question about does breaking problematic tasks into more steps make sense, but does that open up potentially overwhelming customers? I think this is,
Yep.
at least from my perspective, and I know Shareil, you said some sort of frameworks to thinking about this. You sort of have to go back to the beginning and say, why are these tasks here in the first place? Are they actually tasks that we need customers to do? Because if that one big overwhelming thing that people get stuck at is actually a requirement to use the product,
Right.
there's sort of no way around that. And
Right.
setting that expectation with a customer that actually this is going to require some work. This is going to require time with a specific person on your team to implement
Yep.
upfront, is going to sort of alleviate the pain of finding that out later. We said we were going to go live in a week. Actually, it's 3 months in. We're
Yeah.
we're not there yet. So
Yeah. This one comes up so often and I get it. Like everyone does this on our marketing sites. We say super fast to deploy, super easy to set up. You'll be doing this in no time, 80% faster than your current world. And then yes, you show up and there's 60 tasks to set this thing up. Um, so I can relate to that. I think it can be problematic. I think it is two things. It's to Stuart's point. If those tasks have to happen, I would argue it's more problematic to shy away from sharing those. And now a customer is 2 months in and they can't use your product and they're frustrated because they have to still do all these things. So I would rather a customer know very early on that there's a lot of stuff to do. And that is again, an opportunity to collaborate with marketing and with sales to make sure that that's communicated, which is also part of why sharing this plan is important. It is to level set. It is to reset expectations. It is to make sure that customers know that, yes, this is a long process. It might take us 60 days and there's 100 steps in here, but that goal is still the same. It's for you to see the value. It's for you to use the product. It's for you to get the most out of this thing. And can you break that down over time? Probably. Um, can we get you to one moment of value realization instead of all of them at once? That might reduce the number of tasks. That's probably an opportunity to work with product and design and say, look, this one task takes 20 clicks, probably something we can update in the UI. The other piece of it is, if you notice in the screenshot that Stuart is sharing right now, those phases are all collapsed by design. And so the way we like to set up these plans is that first task is front and center. Pay your invoice. You can click get started. It opens that task. Here are all the future tasks that we have to get to. And I like to share this on my kickoff call and say, yes, this is going to be a 3-month process. And yes, it's going to take all these steps. Right now, though, you just need to worry about this single task at hand. And if you make progress here, we will continue through all this. And then by design, all this stuff stays collapsed below until you get through a phase at a time. And then the next phase becomes visible and you can see kind of what's up next and so on. So as nerve wracking as it can be, and I understand, especially when you're a success in an onboarding, because your sales and marketing teams have set these expectations to customer that it'll be super fast and it can happen overnight and you'll be up and running in 12 hours. And here we are saying, oh no, just kidding. That's not actually real. That honestly is a place to go level set with the sales teams and say, stop telling people this takes 2 days to set up. It doesn't take 2 days to set up. It takes 60 days to set up. And in my experience, I've found that even if something is longer, but at least I know it's longer and I know it's communicated and I know what to expect. Sure, I might still be overwhelmed, but I'm less inclined to be frustrated with you as a person. And I'm less inclined to leave your product because of that, because at least I know this is what's expected of me. Now, of course, at the end of that, it better deliver on their goals and the thing they signed up for. Um, but I would shy away from the number of tasks. I would more so focus on the quality of the tasks and the quality of the asks within them so that the quantity doesn't feel as overwhelming because I'm actually seeing myself progress towards my goals as I click through them and make progress.
Yeah, I think it's a great point and a good place to leave it here. We're gonna have to, uh, you know, sticking to the time is something we want to make sure that we're doing. But we can absolutely go. We will do more of these. If you have specific requests for topics that you want us to cover, that whether they're challenges in your own onboarding program that you're trying to tackle, or things you're sort of thinking about down the line, then just let us know. We'd love to put on specific versions of this. We will send you the record. We'll send out the recording. We have some bonus. I know we didn't really get too deep into reporting. We have some content that we'll send you around reporting and how to think through. That was some sort of example dashboards for how you might report on a plan like this. I guess one specific ask while we're here, we try to be pretty free and open with the stuff that we share and the content that we share. If you are building an onboarding program and want to put a plan in front of your customers, and I guess I should caveat with you also use HubSpot, we would love to show you arrows. You can book a demo or book a conversation with our team. There's no hard sell. It is very very education and sort of helpful first, but you can do that at arrows.to. I'll drop that in the chat. But thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to Shareil for being here. But we will send you out the recording, and we hope to see you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks off. My pleasure, Stuart. Have a good rest of your day.